Shalom Aleichem, my dear friends. Thank you for being with us this very, very, very holy, holy day. And before I start anything, I just want to acknowledge the presence of Ari's family that are here with us. And I know that it's an extended family as well. But to Ari's parents and siblings, B'Shem Kol HaKeilah Shelanu, the name of all our Keilah, this extended family here, Anachnu B'Yachad, we love you more and more every single day. And now it's time for us to just daven and sing, because words don't really do that much right now. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Israel, Haomrim Shema Israel. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Israel, Haomrim Shema Israel. Sing with me. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shomer, Shomer, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Shemor, Sheni, Israel. Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Ve'al Yovam, Israel, Haomrim Shema Israel. V'yaneshama ve'haguf ha'olam chusa amala haneshama ve'haguf ha'olam chusa amala aneshama amala ve'haguf ha'olam chusa amala dai 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 oi 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 ai 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 Well, we speak about Ari all year long, and not just on the yarzeit, but this year we had a special program on Yom HaZikaron, where we had Rabbi Susie and Stuart Weiss together with Esti Golovensis speak about the day for them. And I see that, interestingly, Esti's here, Rabbi Weiss is here, Susie's here, and the siblings are here. Yeah, I know how badly you want to do a duet with me right now, but we'll just have to hold back. I'm not up for it right now. But if I could put Rabbi Weiss, if I could ask you, we'll unmute you. If I could ask you to maybe share a word or two. I know it's last second, but it's never too late, if that's possible.
Only for you, Shlomo. I'll just share a story with you. That really is the essence of Ari. True story. And I shared it recently. We had a share and prefaced it by saying that Sukkot obviously has a special connection to Ari. It was the last time we saw him for Simchat Torah. He came home. He insisted on coming home because his grandparents were visiting, and he hadn't been home for a Chag for a full year. This was during the Second Intifada, and he was an explosives expert. He was a sharpshooter, and the army kept him. They wouldn't let him leave, but he insisted on coming home for Simchat Torah, and it was obviously very special for us. And he went back, and the next day he immediately joined a mission in Mesima in Shechem, and one day later fell in battle. So Sukkot was special also because Ari took upon himself to supply Arbat Taminim to the community for many years, beginning in high school. And he did it all the way, really until the very end. Even in his army service, if he couldn't do it, he had somebody do it for him. And now Yedidia, Baruch Hashem, he's taken over the last 18 years from Ari. But I want to tell you one story that happened one year, Erev Yom Tov, Erev Sukkot. Ari had been working, I was helping him a bit, and he was working all day long supplying the Arbat Taminim, people coming over, and Ari being very, very medakdek and very selective to make sure everybody got the Arbat Taminim that was fit for them, that they wanted. He took a lot of time. He explained to them if they had any questions. Basically, it was really a long, all day, 10, 12-hour process. Anyway, I went to lay down before Yantif, and maybe 2 hours before candle lighting, Ari comes into the room and he wakes me up and he says, "Dad, get up. We have somewhere to go right now." I said, "Where? What? It's going to be Yantif soon." He said, "Put your shoes on. I'll tell you on the way." So I put my shoes on. As we ran, literally, out the door and down the street towards Achuza, the main street in Renana, he told me that a few minutes ago, somebody had come to the door and said to him, I'm here to pick up my 2 sets of Arba Minim. Now, Ari knew, of course, he was very careful that he had a very complete list. He would have called anybody who didn't show up, but he didn't say anything to them. He didn't argue with them. And I said to Ari, so I guess you gave them our sets, didn't you? And Ari said, yeah, I did. And now we have to go see if we can find a set of Arba Minim. We ran to the shuk in Yad Lebanim, and it was basically closed. There was almost nobody there. We saw one person who was packing up, and we ran over to him. We always kept a set of extra sets of hadassim and aravot in case people needed during the Chag, but obviously we didn't have any extra lulav or etrog. And we ran over to him and said, we need a set quickly. He said, I only have etrogim. I have just a couple left. And I'll tell you right now, they're kosher, but they're not mehudar by any stretch of the imagination. We said, listen, we don't have one, we'll take it. So we took the etrogim, but we still had no lulav. And there was nobody left there. But there was one guy who was sweeping up and cleaning up from all the booths. And we ran over, and I said to Ari, let's look through the garbage. Let's look through what he's sweeping up. And we looked through, and we pulled out some palm branches, some semi-lulavim. And Ari looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, I think we can still make a bracha on this, bakoshi. And we took that home, and that's what we used to make our set. And I said to Ari, with all the etrogim, we've looked through thousands of etrogim, and whatever sets we'll have in the future, there will not be a set more mahudar than this set, because you wouldn't say anything to the person at the door. And that was his character. That was one of his many midot. Very gentle and really out to serve the public at large, out to serve others and not himself. That's really the midah of tzedakah or of giving, is when you give something that you need yourself, that you want for yourself, but you give it away. And that type of discipline, the ability to hold back and not say to the person, you didn't order a set, I don't have you on my list, I can't help you, I don't have any sets left. Instead, just coming and handing the 2 sets, that ability of discipline came to its excellence when Ari served in the army and was completely devoted in one of the toughest units and one of the toughest situations in Israeli history, the Second Intifada, to give everything of himself without any thoughts of others. And I think it's a particularly important and topical midah for today, when we are in this corona crisis, and it's so hard to hold back and have discipline when we want to do things that are good for us, but not necessarily good for the kahal and not good for the nation. And instead of looking for excuses to say, I'll do what's good for me, that midah of being able to hold back and to do what's good for others is something that the nation needs to learn. It's in short supply and high demand. And it's really something that describes Ari. So if you do hold back at some point, if you do think of Ari, and even when there's something you want to do that you know, I probably shouldn't be doing it, if I want to do what's good for others, let that be in zchut for Ari as well.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Da 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 di. La 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 da 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 da. Di la 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 di. Do 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 do. Di la la da da da. Oi, di la 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 do. Di di di. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. La 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 la. Di da 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 di da. Oi, da 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 di di. Oi, da 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 la 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 la. So in the schus of Ari, we should all be blessed. Kulanu ke'echad. You say these words with me, because tonight they have a very special meaning. Barcheinu avinu, kulanu ke'echad, kulanu ke'echad, be'or panecha. Barcheinu avinu, kulanu ke'echad, kulanu ke'echad, be'or panecha. Barcheinu avinu, kulanu ke'echad, kulanu ke'echad, be'or panecha. Da 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 la la, oi, di da da di di di, oi, da 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 da. So I thought about Ari extra more this summer, and I'll tell everyone why. In the, I don't remember what summer it was when we were young teenagers, we decided, even though we didn't have a ticket or money, but that we were going to America together in the summer, Ari and I. I think I shared this with the family at one point. We decided we're going to go to America, we're going to go to Los Angeles, and we're going to go to Chicago, and we're going to go to Dallas. How 13 or 14-year-olds were going to do this on their own, I don't know. Unimportant, but we had it all written out. In fact, I had it all written out. I had it in some diary that I can't find anymore. But if I ever find it, I'll share it. It was hilarious, because we wrote what we're going to do in each place. So when it came to Chicago, these are the years that the Chicago Bulls were something to be mamish proud of, and we had all these plans about being in the United Center. That's where the Bulls play, and Ari said he has a cousin or something that can help us get into the imunim, into the practices to see the Chicago Bulls, something like that. And we had all these plans, and then at the end we realized there's no basketball in July. The championship is usually in June. So why did I think about him this summer? Because this year Corona actually kept basketball through the summer, and they're still playing. Be'ezer Hashem, my Lakers are actually going to be the champions later tonight. So in any event, I did think about him extra this summer because of that. But on his yarzeit, what I think about every year gets stronger and stronger and deeper, and I hope I'll be able to convey it as clearly as possible. On the day of the yarzeit of someone who was taken, that was basically called up back to Yeshiva Shel Mala, with utmost Kedushas Hashem and utmost Tahara, with utmost purity, in the state of Kedusha, Bikrovai Akadesh, what they stood for is more or less attainable for us to connect to our midah. Zot omeret, the midah of Mesirut Nefesh becomes, it's like a et ratzon for a midah of Mesirut Nefesh. And Ari was taken 18 years ago, just very shy of his 22nd birthday, in a state of utmost tahara, b'kedusha, b'agana al am Yisrael. So what happens every year? every year on this date of Chavdalet Tishrei, every year, the opportunity for us to ask ourselves, what are we living for, becomes more attainable. What am I living for? Bishvil ma? What am I trying so hard to do in this world? Most people have a misconception of the terminology, of the term Mesirut Nefesh. Mesirut Nefesh, can anyone actively act upon Mesirut Nefesh? And the answer is obviously yes. We're not speaking about the Mesirut Nefesh that they're in their Ribono Shel Olam decided certain things in a very traumatic and tragic way. We're speaking about that in the Zchut of Ari, that you and I are able to sit here in Eretz Yisrael, celebrate our holidays, celebrate Torah, celebrate Yiddishkeit, call all our brothers and sisters to come home. In that Zchut of that day, the question is, how am I upping my Mesirut Nefesh on today, on the yarzeit? During Sukkot, when we have the inyanim of Simchat Beit HaShoeva, we all know, and we spoke about this a lot during Sukkot, the Simchat Beit HaShoeva there was a she'iva of Ruach Nevuah. People would draw out the prophecy from the Simcha that happened. There was prophecy drawn out from the water, and there was the Simcha of the Nevi'im, and of course, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, and the Gemara explains this, the Simcha that was taking place. It wasn't just the Simcha of V'samachta b'chagecha b'eitach samach, but because of Simcha, people got a sense of what they're capable of doing in this world. So they drew from that, the Simcha of Sukkot, was that I realize now, after I go through the purification of Yom Kippur, what I'm capable of doing as a clean Yid, as a Yodi mitzuchtzach v'naki. So here we are, the day after Sukkot, the day after Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, and it's a day and since for the last 18 years, we've asked ourselves, well, what am I drawing into my life today that will up my Mesirut Nefesh game? And in the Zchut of the Neshama of Ari, who went up like a Malach Hashem Tzavakot, that is actually more attainable today for those of us that are mitkashering, that are choosing to connect to what happened. Now, Mesirut Nefesh, like I said before, does not necessarily mean trying to find a way that I can give my life actively. If a Kadosh Baruch Hu decides what he decides, that's the Ribono Shel Olam's cheshbon. We don't act like that. I want to tell you a story about Mesirut Nefesh that in the Zchut of Ari I want us all to take on. And it's a story I've shared many times in Shul, but I think it's a very important story, and I think that it's much harder than we think. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was in correspondence with many, many, many people throughout his whole life. The thousands and thousands of letters are kimat all documented in Igrot Kodesh, and they keep on finding new publications. And in one of the correspondences, the story goes as follows, that Lubavitcher Rebbe receives a letter from a scientist who basically wrote him a whole letter disproving the authenticity of Judaism. The Lubavitcher Rebbe sends him back in the mail a pair of tzitz'l. Scientist is sure that the Lubavitcher Rebbe got the address wrong. He probably forgot this is the letter. I wrote him a whole disproof of the authenticity of Judaism. He probably was supposed to send the tzitzis to someone else. I'll send another letter. I'll make my address clear. So the scientist sends another letter, and this time he goes a little bit more charif with his ta'anot about the relevance of Shabbos and whatnot in today's day and age. And this time the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent back to this person a chitas, this like the Tanakh, like the Chumash Tehillim and Tanya. Now the guy is getting ticked off. The scientist is not so happy now because he sees there's a shtick here. So he decides, I'm going to write him back, then this time Gewalt, am I going to give it to Schneerson? That's what he says, right? I'm going to stick it to Schneerson. Even saying those words made me feel sick, but that's what was going on in his mind, right? And this time He basically takes the whole concept of tarata mishpacha, family purity, and kashrut, and almost everything that has to do with the way that we interpret Torah Sheba'al Peh, and wrote a whole dissertation basically proving that this is all shtus and get with the program. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe sends him a pair of tefillin. This guy's done. He said, I'm done with this. This is shtuyot. About 12 years pass, and somehow this professor, this scientist, gets turned on to Yiddishkeit, somehow. And he says, it'd be a really good idea if I went to go get $1 from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and maybe I would ask for mechila for what I did. Stands online on those famous Sunday dollars, and when it comes to his turn, and he says what his name is, the Rebbe immediately realized who he was. But the scientist had a question for the Rebbe. He said to him, Rebbe, why is it that you didn't answer why didn't you just tell me off? Why didn't you answer all my shtuyot, my nonsense kashas? You could have disproved everything I said. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said to him, well, you're right, of course, but I would have won an argument, but would have definitely lost a friend. Now, on the radio in Israel, there is a tashdir, there is a commercial. I wish it was more successful, but it goes like this: Bakvish al tiyeh tzodek, tiyeh chacham. Right? Don't be adamant on being right and being correct while you're on the road. You can, in the name of being correct, run people over. Right? You could do that in the name of being correct. Tiyeh chacham, be smart. In our generation, it seems to me that it takes much, much more Mesirut Nefesh today to not try to disprove someone that does not agree with you than to even take a bullet for them. The concept of Mesirut Nefesh today, for those of us that are not found on we're not on the battlefield, the physical battlefield like Ari was, but we are constantly in the spiritual battlefield. And in the spiritual battlefield, we're given opportunity after opportunity to up our game in the concept of Mesirut Nefesh. It's one of the biggest milchamot. It's one of the biggest wars that we fight all the time. My opinion dictates to me that you are wrong. And what's going to happen to me if I don't stand up for my rights? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? We haven't understood that, standing up for your right of being chacham is much more important than standing up for your right of being tzodek. And we're learning the hard way. We're learning this the hard way. I choose every year to not just focus on the concept of Mesirut Nefesh on a day like today, and to see where can I up my Mesirut Nefesh, where am I willing to be mevater, to give up on things that are not that important, but to do it in a manner that Ari did it, which is the word that I'm most envious of, tmimut. Tmimut. Doesn't mean being naive. And it's a combination of being pure and complete and whole and pristine. But to be tamim, to not lose your tmimut while you have Mesirut Nefesh in the world, is an avodat Hashem that if we could grab onto that, then we could really be true, I guess, holchim le'oro, going in his light. I think I read before that Pnina, his sister, posted that there are 17 children named after Ari. Is that correct? There's 17 now. And I believe 3 of them are his nephews. And for those of us that want to name an area in our hearts or in our life, to name it Ari, I would really take the opportunity of all the Kedusha of Tishrei, that everyone thinks it was a build-up. The Elul is a build-up to Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a build-up to Shabbat Shuvah. Shabbat Shuvah is a build-up to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is then a build-up to the Sukkot. Sukkot is a build-up to Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana Rabbah, then the Sfarim say, is a build-up to Shmini Atzeret. But we know that for the last 18 years, all of that is a buildup. All of that is a buildup to Chav Dalet Tishrei, to the day, to the yarzeit of Mesirut Nefesh. All these days, our chayalim that are willing to give their lives so that you and I can be who we try to be, it's not a matter of we owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves, to ask ourselves, what are we living for? Ari knew what he was living for. He lived for it. He lived for it and he was taken for it. On a night like tonight, when we see how much Mesirut Nefesh is needed in Am Yisrael, and it's not necessarily right now, the vibe is not necessarily our enemies, our physical enemies, which don't get me wrong, they're waiting any second when they could come in and chop us as well. But right now, this nisayon only gets stronger and stronger. So I believe very much that no one has a ptor from being a chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the Rebbe was so big on this that the most important thing that we can do is to make another Yidla feel like they have a space in our heart. If tonight, all we did was decided that tomorrow, Monday, and those of you that are in Chutz La'aretz that are going to hear this after your Chag, first of all, come home. Second of all, take it upon yourselves as well to invite the light of Ari Yeshua into your lives, the light of Mesirut Nefesh, the light of Eretz Yisrael, the light of Tnimut, the light of giving up and being mevater on an argument for a much bigger picture, so that Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, we would never ever lisaken, we would never ever, God forbid, risk the chance of having a friend instead of someone that we could prove wrong. I die 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 die. Die 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 die. Die 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 die. Ay 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 ay. Do 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 do. Ay die 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 die. Ay, 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 ma, 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 ro. Oy, rai, 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 ro. Last week was the yarzeit of the Gra, of the Gaon of Vilna. And the Gaon of Vilna said an amazing Torah when it came to the concept of sinat chinam. Like we know, that the Bayit Sheni was nechrav because of sinat chinam. Says the Gaon of Vilna, I don't understand the word chinam. What does that have to do with anything? If I hate someone, it's not for no reason. There's usually a reason why I hate someone. So that's stam. So the Gaon of Vilna said that when you look inside your heart as to why you hate someone, and you miss the opportunity that Hashem is enabling you right now to work on a certain midah, you missed the whole point of why that person triggered you. And the sin'ah that you have for the person is mamash chinam. Because at that moment, when you have every reason in the world to be mad at them and hate them, and you choose to overcome that, at that moment, oh, everything becomes justified. So your sin'ah is completely chinam. We learned this from Yosef HaTzadik, who had every reason in the world to be so angry at his brothers. And yet, when they came down to Mitzrayim, and also after their father Yaakov Avinu dies, and they think, oh, now they're really going to get it. He's really going to get us. Yosef HaTzadik chose the high road. He chose the road of saying, for what? Ki lemichya shlachani alechem. Kadosh Baruch Hu sent me for such a bigger reason. I could hate you, but then I would hate the reason why God did what he did. Since I did bring up the bulls before, let me say one more thing. In Shul a few months ago, we discussed this concept of when you're able to be ma'avir al your midot, you become a real king. Like Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik was able somehow to la'alit alot al atzmo. Maybe that's why he's called the tzaddik yesod olam. And when he had every legitimate reason to get angry and revengeful, he doesn't. When Michael Jordan, Lahavdil Elef Alfei Havdalos, was inducted into the Hall of Fame, it was the most disgraceful speech any athlete ever gave. Because it's Michael Jordan, right? To me, what I'm about to say resembles more than anything Anu Amelim Ve'em Amelim. Michael Jordan gets up in the Hall of Fame induction, and he gets up and he starts to rip his high school coach who cut him from the basketball team, saying, "Look where I am now." And then he decides to start to rip Jerry Krause, who used to be the GM of the Bulls in the 90s. It's the weirdest thing. You're Michael Jordan. But really, what? You're nothing. Mechila, I'm sorry for those that are getting insulted by this right now. But really what I mean is that it takes Mesirut Nefesh to be ma'avira al midot. It takes Mesirut Nefesh, dafka when I know that I'm right, to not care about that, and to care about something much bigger. So that's sinat chinam. Because when I have a reason to hate somebody, I'm missing out on what I really have an opportunity to do, which is to cleanse my neshama. We become so pure and so clean when we act like this. I bless us all, and please bless me back that in Ari's Zchut, we each become a little bit more royal. We become a little bit more regal. We become a little bit more malchuti. We become a little bit more like Yosef HaTzadik. That we are ma'avir al midot, and make more space in our hearts for anybody that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides to put in our midst. Okay, so since one of the Weiss siblings, I'm not going to say which one, privately asked me for this next song, I'm going to have to do it. It's not Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and it's not the trance version of the following song, but it's still the original. Dum 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 So I'd like to leave you with one final thought for this evening, for this very powerful evening. And I want to say that there's really two types of Kedusha. There's the two types of holiness. There's the type of holiness that I consciously work on all the time. And I can get a sense based on my spiritual meter, basically based on my spiritual compass, how close I am, or how not close I am. Based on how holy or how frum I feel, I can get a sense of my level of holiness. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Could be I really am getting holy. I don't know. Then there's another type of holiness, and that's when the person has absolutely no concept of how kadosh they are because they don't think about that. They just mityatzvim, they show up, and they're not busy in calculating how holy they are, how holy they aren't. Our chayalim are kodesh kodeshim, because none of them is sitting doing shmirah, wondering if they're getting closer to God or they're not getting closer to God. No, that's not part of the chishuv. Most chayalim are completely under the impression that the concept of holiness, that's for the tzaddikim, rabbanim, ani mani. And we always mention how if Ari was in this Zoom, it would be, I mean, he's in Olam HaEmet, so he sees how things really are. But the Ari that was down here in this world, if you would start to call him a tzaddik or a kadosh elyon, it'd be a good laugh to him. That's because the people that are really, really holy, they're completely unaware of how holy they are. It's not something they get caught up in. It's just something kashur to their midah in their nature. Their nature is, I'm willing to be someone that's going to protect Am Yisrael. Holy, not holy, lo dea. But to me, that's always a sign of someone that's mamash in the Kodesh Kodeshim. So in the zchut of everything that we said right now, Alavai HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have rachmanut on us and bring down the only real nechama for the family. The utmost real nechama for the family. And that is Biat Mashiach Tzidkenu together with Tchiyat HaMeitim. And until that happens, we're not going to stop to daven for it. And we're not going to stop to try to emulate the midot that we spoke about right now. Especially this year, that there's chiyut, it's chai. It's 18 years to the day that this act of Mesirut Nefesh took place. in the zchut of this night and of this year and of chai, of chiyut, of life force into it. We should have an extra kavana when we think about our hitkashrut to Am Yisrael and the fact that Am Yisrael, despite whatever it may seem like sometimes, all we need to be reminded of sometimes is simple acts of Mesirut Nefesh to get back on track. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Oh, Avinu Chai, oh, Avinu Chai, oh, Avinu, oh, Avinu, oh, Avinu Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, I am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Chai, Am Yisrael. Let's go, Chavre, I can see you. Grab your hands. Hey, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu, Om Davinu, Om Davinu Chai, Od Ari Chai, Od Ari Chai, Od Ari, Od Ari, Od Ari Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Hey, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu, Om Davinu, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu, Om Davinu, Om Davinu Chai. Hey, Am Yisrael, Yisrael, Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Hey, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu, Om Davinu, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu Chai, Om Davinu, Om Davinu, Om Davinu Chai. Hey, Om Ari Chai, Om Ari Chai, Om Ari, Om Ari, Om Ari Chai, Om Ari Chai. Oh, Nani, oh, Nani, oh, Nani, oh, Nani, Chai, Am Yisrael, Chai, Am Yisrael, Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael. תהא נשמתו צרורה בצרור החיים, יהי זכרו ברוך, שבמריץ יושר, for us to get our acts together in the sweetest way. We should all be zoche for the Geulah Shlema Ba'amitit b'mira b'yameinu.